My name's Ashley Davis. Welcome to my live stream. In my talk today, I'm showing you how to use live reload across your stack to automatically reload your application while you are editing your code. This talk is based on a blog post that I wrote earlier this year. In a moment, I'm going to show you where to find that blog post if you want to follow up on the details in this talk. First, though, before we get started, let's start with the tradition that we have here in Australia. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which I'm broadcasting. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. Okay, just a little bit about me before we start. I'm the VP of Engineering at Hone, and we are building products on the Algorand blockchain. I'm the developer of DataForge Notebook, which I've been open sourcing this year, so have a look at that. I've written some books. My first book, Data Wrangling with JavaScript, shows JavaScript developers that they probably don't need Python to work with data. Everything you need for working with data is already there in JavaScript. You just need to learn how to use it. My second book, Bootstrapping Microservices, is a practical guide to working with microservices, starting with nothing, building a single microservice, and then scaling up to multiple microservices, and eventually deploying them to a production Kubernetes cluster. I'm very happy to announce that Bootstrapping Microservices is coming back for a second edition. So I'm currently working on that, and the early access programming with Manning will be starting soon. So keep an eye on that if you're interested. Now I'm just going to show you where you can get the example code for this talk and also the blog post that will help you go into more details after the talk. So to get the code, you'll have to go to my GitHub page. That's Ashley Davis on GitHub. And if you click on the repositories tab there, and it's the first one here. It may not be the first one when you come back here later, but live reload examples is where you want to go. And here you'll find the complete set of examples that I'm going through today. I'm actually not going through all these examples in this talk. If you want to see all the examples, you'll have to see the blog post and come and look at the code, obviously, as well. But there's some instructions here to help you get started. And the blog post is available on my blog, codecapers.com.au. At the moment, it's the most recent thing, although it won't be soon because I've got a few blog posts that are coming out soon that will be here. But just scroll down and look for live reload across the stack. And you can find my blog post here as well from earlier in the year with all the diagrams that I'm showing tonight in the talk. So if you want to kind of read these diagrams in detail and understand how this works in detail, please see the blog post. So what are we actually talking about with live reload? Well, getting feedback quickly while we are coding, it's really a fundamental part of maintaining a rapid pace of development. Now, writing code quickly isn't our only concern. It's not all about just being fast. You know, the code that we write must also be valuable and reliable. Is your code valuable? Well, only you can say that. Only you or maybe your company or your boss can decide that. Is your code reliable? Well, that is something that you have to test for yourself, and you must run your code frequently to check its output and its behavior. Now, we can create a faster and more seamless workflow by having our application automatically reload, what we call live reload, during development. In this talk, I'm going to examine a variety of full stack techniques for live reload that automate the run it part of your development pipeline. Wise use of these techniques is going to help you become a faster developer. Live reload is the automated approach to restarting our application during development. Now, we do this so that our application automatically picks up our code changes while we are coding. So this is going to save you countless manual and tedious restarts. And you probably already heard of this technique because it's pretty typical really for developers who are creating a web page to have the web page automatically reload while they're editing the code for it. But we can also apply this technique across the stack. So we can use this in the back end. We can use it in microservices. We can use it in our testing pipeline. Now you can see in the diagram here, the part that is labeled, this part can be automated. That's where live reload is going to fit into our coding cycle. This diagram shows the coding cycle unfolded over multiple iterations. It's like a bird's eye view of the ongoing process of development. Through this process, we take our code from working state to working state, accumulating working code and minimizing the buildup of bugs. Any improvements that we can make to each small iteration of coding are going to have an amplified effect on our overall development process. Live reload can have a dramatic effect on our performance, not just because it takes boring and tedious manual reloads and automates them, but also because it can be scaled up. Now, to start with, it can be scaled across the many processes that comprise our application. And this is really important if you're running a microservices application. And it can also be scaled like across all these iterations in our development pipeline, resulting in a large overall improvement. Live reload also has the positive side effect that it encourages small changes and frequent testing. This helps you produce more reliable code. All these benefits considered is why live reload is part of the foundations of my own development process. It's part of my philosophy of coding, and it's one of the core techniques in my new book, Rapid Full Stack Development. Before we get into the code examples, I just want to point out that the live reload technique presented here is only for use in development. Our needs for production are going to be quite different, and I might tell you a little bit more about that once we get to Docker. We're going to be talking about Docker a little bit at the end of this talk and how to do live reload in a Docker container, so that's going to be something exciting to look out for. But yeah, my point is that production is a whole different set of concerns to development, and we'd like to treat production and development differently. So just keep in mind that today we're only talking about using live reload in development, and we're not going to be interested in using this in production. Okay, we're going to start looking at some code examples now. And for each code example, I've got a bit of a diagram and an explanation. And then we're going to look at the code and we're going to try and run it. The first thing we're going to look at is using NodeMon for live reload of a Node.js application. So NodeMon is a package that runs under Node.js, but I like to think of it as a drop-in replacement for Node. That's not exactly correct. It's just a way of thinking about it that might help you. And by this, I mean, instead of invoking Node, you invoke NodeMon instead. So it's that simple. Use NodeMon instead of Node. Under the hood, of course, NodeMon is actually running Node for us. It's also watching our code for changes. And whenever our code changes, NodeMon is going to automatically restart Node.js, which is going to reload our updated code. So let's switch over to the example projects. So I've already got a local copy of it. And you can see here I've got all the examples. I'm actually running Windows here, Windows 11. But I've got Linux commands here. You can see I'm running the ls command. I've got Linux commands because I'm using Git for Windows. I've installed Git for Windows, which is what I think comes with all those commands. I installed it ages ago, so who knows. But yeah, so most of the commands I'm going to show you are going to work on any platform. And if they don't work on other platforms than Windows, I will let you know. So I'm just going to change directory down to example number 1. And I'll just, before I start, I'll just show you what version of Node I'm running. So I'm on Node version 16.16.0. I'm just going to open this example in Visual Studio Code. And I'll put my terminal side by side with Visual Studio Code so I can do a bit of coding and you can see the live reload in action. So we've got a really simple Node.js project here. There's a code file here, index.js. You can see it's just a hello world program. Pretty trivial. There's nothing too exciting in terms of the code in this talk. It's really about the configuration of the projects, the setup of the project. So we've got a hello world program. I can run that directly under Node.js by running node. I've got to path it to the index, the source directory. Sorry, it's under the source subdirectory there, index.js. You can see it's printed out hello world. Now, I think this is probably the only time that there's a platform difference here. If you're running on Mac OS or Linux, you're going to want to use a /. And I'm pretty sure that does not work under Windows. It does work under Windows. That's amazing. I didn't even know that. So, yep, / or / under Windows. But if you're running on Linux or Mac OS, you definitely just want to use a /. Pretty sure / do not work on those platforms. So we've got a simple hello world program here. I've run it directly under Node.js. So nothing too exciting yet. Now, I have installed NodeMon. So if you look at the package.json file here, so package.json is the metadata file for Node.js projects. So you can see here that I've installed NodeMon as a dev dependency. Oh, by the way, if you're following along with this yourself, before you run this program, before you kind of try and run this script with NodeMon, you're going to have to do an npm install to get the NodeMon dependency. So that's what you want to do if you're getting my code, you find my repository, and you want to kind of get using it. If you are installing NodeMon in your own project, it'll be npm install save dev to save it as a development dependency and NodeMon. So that will install NodeMon in your Node.js project. And you can see here in the package.json, we've got NodeMon as a dev dependency. And when I said we can use NodeMon as like a drop-in replacement for Node, I really meant that. So instead of running node source index.js, we can literally replace that with NodeMon, except that's not going to work unless we had NodeMon installed as a global package, a global tool. We don't. We've got it installed in the local package. So we're going to prefix it with the npx command, which is a command that comes with Node.js that allows us to run a local package. So we're underneath npx, we're running NodeMon. So instead of saying node index.js, we're saying npx NodeMon index.js. So what this is going to give us is our live reload under Node.js. So you can see here it's printed hello world like we expected, and it's waiting for changes before restart. Now I can go into index.js and I can actually change the code. So I'm going to say hello computer. I'm going to save this. So I'm saving on the right hand side. I'm saving this. Watch on the left hand side here. So saving now, and you can see that it's automatically restarted and it's printed hello computer. So we can be coding away. This could be, I mean, this is only a trivial program, right? But this could be thousands of lines of code. And we could be, every time we change, a line of code somewhere here or there or everywhere, it's going to restart and rerun it. Change it back to hello world, and it restarts again, and it prints hello world. So this is live reload in Node.js. And of course, to be good Node.js developers, we're going to implement some conventional scripts here, like the start script. So this is saying that when we do an npm start, it's going to run directly under Node. So I can run this as npm start. So this is a Node.js convention. Whenever you're getting a Node.js project, you usually just have to remember to do an npm install to get the dependencies, and then an npm start to run whatever this application is. So you can see that just prints hello world. Now the other thing I've got here is a start dev script. This is my own personal convention, so this is not a standard Node.js convention, but other people use this or similar conventions for the development version. So this is what's running NodeMon. This is running our application in development mode for live reload. So I can run that by doing an npm start dev. So this is, you can see here the command that it's running. So it's running NodeMon, printing hello world, and then it's waiting for changes for restart. So I can do my changes, hello GUI, and you can see that it's automatically restarted over on the left here. So that is using NodeMon with Node.js. Now, I don't have a slide for this example, so I'm just going to go into example number 2 and just quickly show you this. This is an example of how to configure NodeMon using a configuration file. So this is pretty much the same as the previous example, except in our package.json, you can see we're running, for our start dev command here, we're just running NodeMon. We're not specifying the file. So we're going to specify the file in the NodeMon configuration file, which you can see here, NodeMon.json. And it's the exec field here that says what command and what file to run. So this is where we're telling it to run Node against this script. So the interesting thing to note about this is that we could run this on anything. We could run this not just on Node.js, we can run it on any other program we like. And this allows us to make our own custom live reload pipelines. In the past, I've done something like making it watch CSV files and then running a tool on the CSV files to do some transformations. So that was basically like a live reload data processing platform or pipeline. Now there's some other fields here, what files should we not watch for changes? What are the code files we want to watch for changes? Now the other important thing about the NodeMon configuration file is it allows us to use NodeMon with TypeScript. And that's what I'm coming to next. But I have a slide for this. And so example number 3 is an example of running TypeScript code and using live reload with NodeMon. Just because I'm a fan of TypeScript, I love it. Using TypeScript with NodeMon would be very difficult. You might imagine that we'd have to compile our TypeScript code to JavaScript code before restarting our application. And that's certainly possible. But it's kind of complicated because you'd need to run like multiple commands in parallel. Now, fortunately for us, we have this package called TS Node, which is like another drop-in replacement for Node. But what it does is it allows us to run TypeScript code directly under Node.js without first having to compile the code. And this makes it so much easier to work with TypeScript during development. And also when you're learning TypeScript, it's a lot less hassle just to play around with TypeScript and you don't have to compile it first. And again, this is something that you want to use in development. It's not that, like for performance, really, you don't want to use TS Node in production, but it's great to use it in development. So this diagram here shows how we can run Node.js under TS Node, which in turn we are running under NodeMon. So now NodeMon is going to be watching for our TypeScript files, and when they change, it's going to restart TS Node, which is going to restart Node.js, which is going to reload our code files. Now that sounds complicated, but you'll see, I'm going to show you the example now, so you'll see it's not actually that complicated. I'm just changing to the third example now and opening Visual Studio Code. Okay, so let's have a look at the package.json file project. So we've got a few new scripts here, a few new dependencies. The important ones here are that we have TypeScript installed, so that's the TypeScript compiler, which we use to compile our code for production use. And TS Node, which is the plugin or the package I was telling you about, which is like a drop-in replacement for Node.js, which allows us to run our TypeScript code directly under Node.js. Now, running with TypeScript is a little bit different to using normal JavaScript. Normally, if we want to run this in production, we first have to build it using the TypeScript compiler. So I've got a script here for that, a build script, which runs the TSC TypeScript compiler command. So from the command line, I can run that. I can run npm run build. So that's building my TypeScript code into JavaScript under the build directory. And from there, I can use the start script, which I've got in my package.json here. So we've got the start script here, which runs normal old Node on a normal old JavaScript file. You can see that this is in the build directory, and the build directory is where our compiled JavaScript files go. So I can do an npm start, and I'll get a hello world. Nothing too exciting again. This code is pretty trivial, but it's the setup that's important. So we've got a hello world here from TypeScript. Now, so we want to look at now how do we run this with live reload under NodeMon, and you can see here I've created a start dev script that just runs NodeMon. So again, we're delegating basically all the setup of NodeMon to the configuration file. So let's have a look at the configuration file. We're just looking at nodemon.json here. So this time around in the exec field, we're running TS Node, and we're telling it to run our TypeScript file. So essentially, we're just going straight to TypeScript. We're executing that directly under Node.js, and we're letting TS Node sort of transparently under the hood handle the compilation and the execution of the JavaScript code. One other thing really here that's different to the last example is that we're now configured the extension to watch. So we're only allowing NodeMon to watch TypeScript files, TS files. So I've got this set up to run under npm run start dev, and we're going to see some live reload with TypeScript now. Again, there's an index.js file here, and you can see here I've got a string hello world from TypeScript that I'm printing out. But just to prove that this is TypeScript, again, very trivial code, I've typed it with string. So this is TypeScript code. If this was normal JavaScript, this would run. And I can change this, so I can just say something different. What do I want to say? Hello there. And I'm going to save this. You can watch on the left. It's automatically restarting. You can see here that it's running TS Node against my index.ts file. That took a moment, but we got there eventually, and it says hello there.